My name is Jennifer Lee. I'm 31 and I live in San Francisco where I work as a forensic accountant. My brother Michael was the one who encouraged me to pursue accounting. Jen, he used to say, you've got this amazing ability to see stories in numbers that nobody else notices. He was right. Numbers tell stories, sad ones, happy ones, and sometimes stories of betrayal. I never thought I'd use my skills to investigate my own brother's death. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Michael had died in a car accident on Highway 1, his car somehow veering off the coastal cliffs. My parents had passed years earlier, so it was just me and his wife Sarah left to identify the body. While I collapsed in grief, Sarah stood there stoic, almost detached. I chalked it up to shock at the time. "He always drove so carefully," I whispered. Sarah just nodded, her eyes dry. The morning after the funeral, Sarah mentioned casually that there wouldn't be any life insurance money. "Michael cashed it out months ago," she said, stirring her coffee. "He must have had debts I didn't know about." Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Michael and I talked about everything, especially finances. He never mentioned cashing out his policy, a policy our parents had started for both of us when we were children. And Michael with secret debts? The man who organized his receipts and tracked every penny on 3 apps. "That doesn't sound like Michael," I said. Sarah shrugged. "People keep secrets, Jen, even from their sisters." I let it drop, but that night, lying awake in my childhood bedroom at what was now Sarah's house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Michael wouldn't cancel his insurance without telling me. He just wouldn't. As I helped Sarah organize Michael's belongings over the next few days, I noticed other oddities. His prized watch collection was missing several pieces. His emergency cash box in the home office held just $43 instead of the $2,000 he always kept there. When I mentioned these things, Sarah had quick explanations. He sold the watches to a collector, and he must have spent the cash. Must have, might have, probably. Sarah had a lot of guesses about what my brother had done with his money, but no real answers. "I need some time," she told me after a week. "I appreciate your help, Jennifer, but I need to grieve alone now." Her eyes darted away from mine as she spoke. The dismissal felt abrupt, almost rehearsed. I nodded, packed my bags, and pretended to leave town. Instead, I checked into a hotel 20 minutes away and began my real work. Michael deserved better than shrugs and maybes. As a forensic accountant, I know that money leaves footprints, so I started tracking. I called Michael's bank, posing as Sarah, something I'm not proud of, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I learned that Michael had indeed withdrawn the life insurance money, $250,000, $3 months before his death. The bank representative mentioned that Michael had seemed confused during the transaction. Confused, my brother was sharp as a tack. He caught errors on restaurant bills before the server even left the table. That night, I went back to Michael's house while Sarah was at her grief support group meeting. I had kept my spare key. In his home office, I methodically went through his computer files, finding bank statements he'd downloaded and hidden in a folder labeled Tax Prep 2014. A year nobody would bother checking. What I found made my stomach turn. Regular transfers from Michael's accounts to an unfamiliar one, starting small but growing larger over 8 months. By the time he died, over $300,000 had disappeared from his savings. Michael, who had been saving to start his own business since college. I cross-referenced the account number and discovered it was a private account in Sarah's name, one opened 6 months after their wedding. An account Michael likely knew nothing about. My hands shook as I printed the records. As I reached for them from the printer, I knocked over a stack of Michael's notebooks. One fell open to entries from last year. "Something's wrong with the accounts," he had written. "Talked to Sarah again about the missing money, but she insists I must have spent it and forgotten. Am I losing my mind? Have made an appointment with Dr. Chen to discuss memory issues." My heart nearly stopped. Michael thought he was experiencing memory problems because money kept disappearing. I flipped back several pages and found more entries. "I felt dizzy and confused all day again. Sarah gave me tea before bed last night, said it would help me sleep. Can't seem to remember details from our financial discussion." I carefully replaced everything except the bank records and slipped out, my mind racing. This wasn't just financial abuse, this was something far more sinister. The next day, I visited Dr. Chen, claiming to be closing out Michael's medical affairs. The kind doctor hesitated, but ultimately shared that Michael had come in concerned about memory issues. I ran tests, Dr. Chen said. There was nothing physiologically wrong with your brother's brain. I actually suggested he might be experiencing gaslighting, or perhaps someone was. He paused. Was what? I pressed. I suggested he might want to test for certain substances in his system. He seemed alarmed by the suggestion. He never returned for his follow-up. I felt sick. Was Sarah drugging my brother to make him doubt his own mind while she drained his accounts? I needed more information, but I couldn't let Sarah know I suspected anything. So I played the part of the grieving sister moving on with her life. I called her, told her I was back in town after getting away to clear my head, and suggested we have dinner sometime soon. To remember Michael together, I said, my voice carefully balanced between sadness and healing. Sarah agreed, seemingly relieved that I wasn't asking more financial questions. Meanwhile, I deepened my investigation. I contacted Michael's friends discreetly, asking if he had mentioned memory problems or financial concerns. Most were surprised. The Michael they knew was sharp and organized, but his best friend, Alex, had a different story. He was worried, Alex told me over coffee. He said he felt like he was going crazy. Things moved around the house. Money disappeared. He'd agree to things and then have no memory of the conversations. He actually asked me if I thought Sarah might be, Might be what? I asked, though I already knew. Gaslighting him, or worse. Alex looked uncomfortable. I told him he was being paranoid. Now I feel terrible. Do you really think she was? I don't know yet, I lied, but I'm going to find out. Alex offered to help. As a cybersecurity expert, he had skills I needed, and as Michael's oldest friend, he had the motivation. With his help, I gained access to Michael's email accounts and cloud storage. What we found changed everything. Michael had been conducting his own investigation. He'd installed a hidden camera in his home office after suspecting someone was accessing his computer. The footage was uploaded to his private cloud storage. We watched in horror as video after video showed Sarah entering his office late at night, using his computer, going through his files. In one clip, she carefully added something to a mug before bringing it to Michael in bed. 20 minutes later, she returned to help a visibly disoriented Michael to the office, where she had him sign documents while he could barely keep his eyes open. "Oh my God," Alex whispered. She was drugging him. But why? The money was large but not life-changing in expensive San Francisco. Sarah had her own career as a pharmaceutical sales rep. There had to be more to the story. We kept digging. In Michael's email drafts folder, we found unsent messages to an insurance fraud investigator. Michael had begun to suspect the worst, but hadn't sent the emails yet. The last draft was dated 3 days before his death. Then came our first breakthrough. In a hidden folder on his cloud drive labeled Anniversary Photos, we found not romantic images, but documentation of text messages between Sarah and someone, saved in her phone as J messages that Michael had apparently photographed from her phone while she was showering. "Sarah, he's asking about the money again." J, distract him, you know how. "Sarah, I'm running out of stuff. It's getting harder to get samples from work." J, figure it out. We're too close now. The accident needs to look clean. "Sarah, I'm scared." J, don't wimp out. Think about the money. Think about us. I felt the blood drain from my face. Accident? The text was from 2 weeks before Michael's death. "They were planning it," I whispered. "This wasn't opportunistic. They were planning to kill him all along." But who was Jay, and why target Michael? I needed to get closer to Sarah without revealing what I knew, so I ramped up the grieving sister act, calling her more often, suggesting we cope with our grief together. Sarah seemed annoyed but played along, perhaps worried I'd start asking financial questions again if she didn't. During our lunch dates, I started mentioning a non-existent boyfriend, claiming I was finally finding happiness again. Sarah took the bait. "You should bring him to dinner," she suggested, a gleam in her eye. "I'm seeing someone too, actually. It's new, but he's been really helpful during this difficult time." I feigned surprise and enthusiasm. That's wonderful, we could do a double date. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Sarah and her new boyfriend at an upscale restaurant downtown. When she'd introduced him as Jason, I'd maintained my pleasant smile, but inside I was reeling. Jason was Jay. But the real shock came when I truly looked at him. I recognized Jason Sullivan immediately, my cousin from my mother's side, who had moved away after a bitter family dispute over my grandmother's will 10 years ago. A dispute where Michael, as executor, had ruled against Jason's claim to family property. Jason didn't recognize me at first. I'd lost weight since my brother's death, dyed my hair, and was wearing glasses I didn't need. I'd suspected Sarah's, Jay, might be someone I knew, given the personal nature of the crime. "Have we met before?" Jason finally asked, squinting at me. "I don't think so," I lied smoothly. "I have one of those faces." Throughout dinner, I watched them interact. Their story was that they'd met at a grief support group, the one Sarah supposedly attended while I was searching Michael's office. They claimed they'd only been dating for a month, well after Michael's death. But their familiar touches and inside jokes told a different story. "Sarah mentioned you're in pharmaceuticals too," I asked Jason innocently. A flash of alarm crossed Sarah's face before she composed herself. "Oh, I don't think I mentioned that to Jennifer." "You must have," Jason said. "Yes, that's how Sarah and I had so much to talk about when we first met. Industry colleagues and all that." The pieces were falling into place. Jason worked for a competing pharmaceutical company. He had access to drugs. He had a grudge against Michael. And now he was openly dating the widow, a widow who had mysteriously come into hundreds of thousands of dollars. After dinner, I excused myself early, claiming a headache. In reality, I rushed to meet Alex, who had been digging into Jason's background. "You're not going to believe this," Alex said, showing me his laptop. "Your cousin Jason was fired from his pharmaceutical job 6 months ago for stealing samples. He's been unemployed since." "But he and Sarah just showed up in a brand new Tesla," I said. Alex nodded grimly. "And there's more. I found old emails between Sarah and Jason going back 18 months, long before Michael's death. They've been having an affair almost from the beginning of her marriage." I felt sick. So their plan was what? Marry Michael, drain his accounts, then kill him for the insurance money that no longer existed because they'd already taken it. Alex shook his head. "The insurance was just a bonus. Look at this." He showed me property records for a vacation home in Michael's name, a cabin in Lake Tahoe I'd forgotten about. It had been in our family for generations and was worth at least $2 million in today's market. "The deed was transferred to Sarah 3 weeks before Michael's death," Alex said. "His signature looks shaky." I knew why. He'd been drugged when he signed it. But I still didn't have definitive proof of murder. Financial abuse, gaslighting, and fraud, yes, but murder would be harder to prove. I needed Sarah or Jason to confess. Over the next month, I became Sarah's best friend. I listened to her fake grief, pretended to support her new relationship, and slowly gained her trust. All while building my case with Alex's help. We discovered that Sarah had filled prescriptions for benzodiazepines using her pharmaceutical connections, drugs that, when combined with alcohol, could cause confusion and memory loss. We found Michael's car had been serviced at a shop where Jason's college roommate worked, just days before the accident. And we learned that Jason had suddenly paid off $50,000 in gambling debts the week after Michael died. Then came the masterstroke. I invited Sarah and Jason to Michael's favorite restaurant for his birthday to remember him properly. During dinner, I presented Sarah with a small box. "I found this in Michael's safety deposit box," I lied. "He must have forgotten to give it to you." Inside was a beautiful necklace, one I'd actually purchased myself. Sarah looked genuinely surprised and touched. She put it on immediately. "There's something else," I said, pulling out an envelope. "He left this letter with it. I haven't read it, it's addressed to you." Sarah hesitated before opening it. The letter inside was one I'd written myself, imitating Michael's handwriting from samples Alex had helped me analyze. "Sarah, for our anniversary, I know things have been strange between us lately. I've been confused, forgetful, but I want you to know I've taken steps to protect us both. I've been recording our conversations, documenting the strange episodes. If anything happens to me, these records will be released. I love you and trust you, but I need to understand what's happening to me. Always yours, Michael. There was no such recording, but Sarah and Jason didn't know that. The color drained from Sarah's face. Under the table, Jason gripped her knee so hard his knuckles turned white. I pretended not to notice. He seemed so paranoid toward the end, I said innocently. Always talking about missing money and memory problems. Dr. Chen mentioned he suspected someone might be drugging him. Isn't that wild? Sarah's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. Michael had a lot of issues in those final months. Speaking of issues, I continued casually, the police called me today. They're reopening the investigation into Michael's accident. Something about brake lines being tampered with. They want to interview both of us next week. Another lie, but a calculated one. Jason stood abruptly. I need some air. After he left, Sarah leaned forward. Jennifer, those recordings Michael mentioned, did you find them? Not yet, I lied. But the police have his cloud accounts now, so I'm sure they'll find everything. Sarah excused herself to check on Jason. Through the restaurant window, I watched them arguing intensely in the parking lot. My trap was set. 3 days later, Sarah called me in tears. Jennifer, I need to tell you something horrible, about Jason, about everything. We met in my hotel room, where I'd carefully set up recording equipment with Alex's help. Sarah walked in looking like she hadn't slept in days. Jason's gone, she said. He took money from our joint account and disappeared, but before he left, he confessed something terrible. I stayed silent, letting her spin her tale. Jason was obsessed with hurting Michael because of that old will dispute. When he found out I was married to Michael, he seduced me, manipulated me. Tears streamed down her face. He stole drugs from work and showed me how to use them on Michael. He said it was to confuse him enough to get his money. But then Jason started talking about more permanent solutions. Did you help him tamper with Michael's car? I asked directly. Sarah shook her head vehemently. No, I swear. Jason did that alone. He was a mechanic before pharmaceuticals. I didn't know he was going to kill Michael. I thought we were going to take some money. And the lake house, the life insurance. That was all Jason's plan. She was sobbing now. I know I'm guilty, Jennifer. I helped steal from Michael. I drugged him, but I never wanted him dead. That was all Jason. I'll testify. I'll tell the police everything. I nodded slowly. I believe you, Sarah, and I think you should tell them everything, right now. I pulled out my phone and called the detective who had been waiting in the next room, not a bluff this time, but a real police officer who had become very interested in my evidence over the past weeks. Sarah's confession, combined with the mountain of evidence Alex and I had compiled, was enough for the police to issue an arrest warrant for Jason. They found him 3 days later at a casino in Reno, already gambling away his escape money. The trial was brutal but swift. Jason maintained that Sarah had been the mastermind, but the evidence suggested otherwise. In the end, both were convicted, Jason of first-degree murder, Sarah of second-degree murder, and many fraud charges. The judge was particularly harsh in sentencing. You didn't just take a life, she told them. You tortured this man mentally in his final months, making him doubt his own sanity while you drained his accounts and plotted his death. This court finds such calculated cruelty deserving of the maximum sentence. Jason received life without parole. Sarah got 40 years. I sat through every day of the trial, watching the woman who had killed my brother try to cry her way to sympathy. It didn't work. The jury saw through her act just as I had. After the sentencing, I visited Sarah in prison once. I wanted her to know exactly who had brought her down. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked her through the visitor's glass. You thought you were the smartest person in the room, but Michael was brilliant, and he raised me to be just like him. What do you want from me? Sarah asked bitterly. I've lost everything. I want you to know that those recordings you were so afraid of, they never existed. Michael didn't know what you were doing. I tricked you into confessing with an empty threat. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. But here's what did exist, I continued. A brother who loved me enough to teach me everything he knew about following money trails, about spotting liars, about justice. I stood to leave, then paused. Oh, and the cabin at Lake Tahoe? Michael put it in a trust 5 years ago, named me as trustee. The transfer you and Jason arranged was invalid from the start. All that planning, all that betrayal, and you never actually got the property. Isn't that ironic? The money recovered from Sarah and Jason's accounts went to establish a foundation in Michael's name, providing support to victims of financial abuse. A form of domestic violence that often goes unrecognized until it's too late. I sold my condo in San Francisco and moved into the lake house, where Michael and I had spent summers as children. Sometimes at sunset, I sit on the dock and talk to him, telling him about the foundation's work, about the people we're helping. There are still days when grief hits me like a physical blow. When I'd give anything to hear Michael's laugh again or get one of his overly detailed text messages about some obscure financial concept he found exciting. The pain doesn't go away, you just build your life around the empty space. People sometimes ask if getting justice made it easier. It didn't. Nothing makes losing your person easier. But it did make it possible to breathe again, to move forward knowing that the people who treated Michael's life like it was disposable are paying for what they did. In the end, Sarah and Jason never understood what they were really stealing. Not just money or property or even a life, but a future. Michael's future. Our shared future as siblings who would grow old together, who would be there for all of life's moments, big and small. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't heal what was broken. The satisfaction is hollow when what you really want is the impossible, to turn back time, to save someone you love. What revenge gives you is a voice when someone tries to silence you. It gives you agency when someone has made you feel powerless. Sarah thought she'd buried my brother's voice along with him. Instead, she gave me something worth fighting for: the truth. I sometimes wonder if you're facing something similar, if someone is making you doubt your own reality, if money is disappearing, if explanations don't quite add up. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And remember that numbers don't lie, even when people do. If my story has helped even one person recognize the red flags I missed until it was too late, then sharing it was worth it. Because the best revenge isn't just bringing down those who hurt us, it's making sure they can't hurt anyone else. If you've experienced something similar, I'd like to hear your story in the comments. Sometimes naming our experiences out loud is the first step toward justice. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more real-life accounts of people finding their power in the darkest situations. No one should have to face betrayal alone, not my brother, not me, and certainly not you.